This will be a brief video on the basic operation of the new sound and video systems installed at West Hills Baptist Church. The new sound system consists of new main speakers for the main part of the nave, as well as side fill speakers for the balcony and the lower seating area, as well as under balcony fill speakers, so that sound coverage is even throughout the seating area. First, let's talk about turning on the system. In the wooden roll top rack to the right of the operator, you will see turn the key switch all the way to the right to energize the system. And then conversely, at the conclusion of worship, turn the switch all the way to the left to shut the system down. The booth is laid out with control of the sound system on the left with the Midas M32 mixer, and then video control located to the right of it. The video switcher is the black unit in the center, and the light gray controller to the right of that is the camera controller, with the video monitor located behind those. Let's talk a little bit about the Midas M32 mixer and its layout. The mixer is divided into input sections, which are these faders to the left, controls, which are this bank of faders in the center. These are called DCA, which stands for Digitally Controlled Amplifier. These act as subgroup masters, essentially controlling single or groups of other faders. Then the console has the output section, and then you see the monitoring section, which allows you to monitor either the main output mix, the broadcast mix, or solo individual channels in the headphones. To the right of that is the talkback section, which by pressing talkback 1 will allow you to speak to someone on the platform through the chancel monitors. The console operates on a layers concept. There are more channels than there are physical layers on the console, so they are placed on virtual layers, one under the other. Those are accessed by pressing the buttons to the left of each fader bank. Normally, you want to ensure that the top button is illuminated. The top button in both the input fader bank and the DCA and master fader bank will give you all the controls at your fingertips that you need. To the lower right, you'll find the cue recall buttons. The console has the capability of storing over 100 individual snapshots of settings on the console that can be instantly recalled. This is of great benefit during a worship service because it allows you to instantly transition from one scene to the next. These buttons have been programmed for the settings that you need for most worship services. All you would need to do is follow along in a bulletin and then note the scene that's coming up next and actuate that at the correct time. I recommend that prior to the service you identify which scene is going to be needed for each part of the worship service and mark it in your bulletin as I have done here. In the bottom of the rack to the far right in the control booth, you'll see an amplifier, and that is the amplifier that is driving the speakers in the hallway and the lobby. Normally there's nothing that should need to be done to that, but I wanted you to know what it was for. Going back to our overhead shot of the entire control booth, let's move over to video, and we're going to look at the switcher there to the right. This switcher is laid out in a fairly conventional manner for video production. You have 2 rows of white illuminated buttons on the bottom left, and those are going to be addressed here shortly, but that's what you will primarily be working with. Each one of those represents an input into the switcher. You have 3 cameras and then additional inputs available to you. If we look up at the monitor that's behind the switcher and the camera controller, You can see different camera shots represented there. On the bottom row of that screen, those first 3 squares, you see the first one that is outlined in green. Those are your cameras, camera 1, 2, and 3. You'll notice camera 1 has a green square around it. Camera 2 has nothing. Camera 3 has a red square around it. What that tells you is that camera 3 is the one that is now live on air. And you see that confirmed by looking in the upper right program monitor, and you see that shot live on air. The camera 1 shot, which is in the green box, if you look in the top left preview monitor, then that is the camera that is selected in preview and is ready to go on air when you take your next transition. Let's look at those controls a little closer on the switcher. Here you see the top row, which has red lights behind whichever button has been selected. A red light means that that particular source is actually live on the air, or called hot. The row below that is your preview bus. So whatever you've selected on that bus will illuminate green, and that will show up in that preview monitor on the main screen. To make your transition between the 2 shots, there are 3 ways you can do it. You have 2 buttons toward the bottom center of the switcher. One is labeled Cut, and one is labeled Auto. And pressing the Auto button will give you a dissolve in between 2 shots. Pressing the Cut button will give you an instant transition. I recommend using cuts during portions of the worship service that involves the spoken word, and use the auto transition with the dissolves for music, so that when you're shooting music, you've got a smooth, more musical feeling transition between camera shots. You can also use that during maybe a quiet prayer, meditative music, that type of thing. Let the mood of whatever's happening guide you. The third way to effect a transition is with the fader. This black fader located to the right of the Cut and Auto buttons will let you manually do a dissolve between 2 shots, like so. That way you can adjust the speed of that dissolve if you wish to speed it up or slow it down, or pause it even between 2 shots if you want 2 shots overlaid on top of each other. You have that capability with that fader. Going back to the switcher, in the middle section of the switcher, you will see a lot of buttons with different geometric looking shapes on it. And what those buttons are is to select your transition style. 99% of the time, you want a smooth dissolve between. You don't want to do fancy effects that'll be distracting to what's going on. So the top left button that is labeled Mix in all those transition buttons is the one that should normally be selected. In the lower right-hand corner of the video switcher, you'll find a button labeled FTB, and you notice it's got a little safety guard around the sides of the switch there to help keep it from accidentally being depressed if you rest your hand on it. FTB stands for Fade to Black, and it does exactly that. So at the end of your broadcast, I recommend that You fade down the audio with the Program Master on the sound console and push that fade to black button at the same time, and then that will take you down to black with no audio as your program fades out at the end of the worship service. Now let's move over to the camera controller. The 3 pan-tilt zoom cameras that you have are all moved and controlled by this device from PTZ Optics. You'll notice a couple of features on it. Bottom left, you'll see a zoom control knob. You'll see a bunch of keys in the center, and then to the right, you'll notice a joystick. And we'll talk a little bit about what all those do. Before you're going to adjust any camera, you need to select the particular camera you wish to control, and that is done by the camera buttons located here. You want to be sure the camera that you are about to adjust is not online, providing you don't want people seeing you adjust your shot to prepare it in the preview monitor. So normally, whatever camera you've selected in preview on the switcher, you're going to come over here and punch that camera button on the camera controller to adjust it before you take that camera and put it live on your broadcast. Then after that camera is selected, then you can adjust it using the joystick. You can twist the top of the joystick to zoom in or out with that particular camera. Then you can move that joystick up and down and the camera responds. Move it left and right, the camera will respond left and right. Very intuitive. Then you also have presets that are stored into each camera to help you get to shots quicker during a live service when you may not have the luxury of all the time you want to precisely set up your next shot that you want to take. So to operate using the presets, again, you're going to select your camera using the top row. Then the buttons below it that look like a telephone keypad, you have 10 presets, 1 through 9 and the 0 key. So each camera is storing those 10 presets separately inside each camera. So you can have different presets in each camera if you want. I recommend that you have similar shots in each camera for each number so that it always makes sense. If you're looking for a pulpit shot, then you're going to push the same number. The cameras have been pre-set up with camera shots that you'll find on a sheet of paper located near the camera controller in the booth. As you can see here, each camera 1, 2, and 3 are identified with their preset numbers on the left and what shot that's going to give you when you select that particular preset. Then once you load that preset, the camera goes to the shot, then you can use the joystick to fine-tune the shot quickly before you go and take it and put it online. Take some time and get to know the controls on your new system and get to the point where everything is comfortable and familiar to you. Thank you very much, and I hope that this video is helpful.